Alrighty. Hey gang. Welcome back, you guys. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to another episode of Stove Chat, episode 35, where we get together every Wednesday and talk about wood stoves, masonry heaters, do-it-yourself wood-burning heaters, rocket stoves, rocket mass heaters, all that stuff. So I'm Matt, your host, and I sell plans on my website, walkerstoves.com, and we're here talking about all that stuff, building stoves from those plans and stoves without those plans. So go check out my website, walkerstoves.com, and if you need help with the build, come on back and we'll help you out here. So there's my pitch. Thanks for letting me do that, you guys. How are you guys? Nice to see you guys. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Thumbs up, all you guys. Thanks for being here. So stoked every Wednesday when I turn on and see all you guys here. It's so great. So hello, call outs to all my friends here. Two Trance, Pete, Belgian Gulch, Permaculture Playground, Tall Shadow, Mark. Hello, everybody. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. So got a great show today, you guys. We got some good stuff to talk about. I've gotten some awesome emails from you guys as usual every week. I'm so fortunate. You guys always keep me keep the thing primed here, and I love it. So appreciate all the emails. Short Bus Life, nice to see you. Thank you so much for your email. That was so cool to see your stove, Short Bus Life. As a matter of fact, if we have time today, would you mind if I show those pictures to the group? I'd love to show the gang your mobile rocket cook stove. I think it's fantastic. You know, it's you basically just kind of modular built like what my full cook stove is. Just the way you coupled those pieces together and then the way you put it in that enclosure. I just love it. So if I could share that, we can go over that. I'd love to do it if you don't mind. So yeah, we got all kinds of people here. Hey everybody. Hey Mark, thanks for your emails this week. I think you're on my list to answer today. I haven't gotten back to those yet. I was going to do those afterwards, so I apologize. Cool, Short Bus Life. We'll see if we got time to get to that. Thank you. Love to share it. So, yeah, Tall Shadow. I do have the fire going today. So I did that on purpose for the show. I don't know if it's going to be bright enough with the sun out to see the flames in there. But man, that door. So let's talk about doors. That's kind of one of the first things on my show today that I want to go over. So yeah, hey Clint, nice to see you, man. 50 degrees at your location there in Hawaii. That's a nice, cool day. You're definitely gonna enjoy some fires up there. So all right, you guys. Thanks so much for being here, you guys. Love it. Love to see all you. So well, this will be a segue into what I want to talk about as a topic, but I want to go back over my Dragon Tech door that I received 2 weeks ago from Tom there at Dragon Tech, our own Belgian Gulch here. And I've been, using this thing now for about 2 weeks. Has it been 2 weeks? A week and a half, I guess. Man, I love this thing, Tom. It is fantastic. So it closes so securely and tightly, and it's just the seal is great. It's totally sound. I've built quite a few doors, and one of the hardest things about door building when you build them out of steel is that when you weld them, they tend to warp and change shape. And it's pretty difficult to get a real good seal on a custom welded door. It takes a lot of care and attention to detail, and it's work. And I just want to say that my Dragon Tech door is really making me happy. I've got the best air control I've really probably ever had. My doors work great, but they, over time the seals kind of can wear out and stuff like that. So it's great. I love it, love it, love it. Rock solid. So yeah, Tall Shadow, thanks for bringing it up. I am loving my door. It's a fantastic door. I probably should paint it some contrasting colors. Maybe I'll do that so that we can enjoy it. So it isn't just a black rectangle there in the background. It really has really nice detail on the hinges and the door and whatnot. It's just difficult to see because it's all flat black. And on that note, actually, that brings me to one. It's not an improvement, Belgian Gulch, and this is something that I want to I would not give you improvements in public like this. I don't have any critique of your door at all to say. If I did, I'd tell you an email. But whenever you're building any steel parts for your stove, you're going to paint them. And if it's something like the door in an area that's going to get very hot, you're going to probably use a curing type paint, something like a header paint or an engine paint. Short bus life paint details in gold. I mean, I actually might do something like that, to bring out the hinges and whatnot. I might just do that, or outline the door. That's a good idea. That's actually a really classic color scheme, isn't it? Black and gold in stoves, cast iron type stuff. So anyways, when you are doing your metal work for your stove, and it's going to be in hot areas, you're going to paint it. You're probably going to use curing paint. You need to just remember that it is going to bake and cure the first time you fire the stove, and it's going to smoke a bit, and it's going to make some smell. Now, Belgian Gulch, I knew what you used. So Belgian Gulch says he's using 2,000 degree header paint, which is my choice too. What is it called? There's a few different brands, but I've used that quite a few times, and I think that's the best. And I've actually used that on radiators as well, and it holds up pretty darn good. Like on your barrels, I have like a bright blue. I think you've seen it. It was in that sauna build I did, that bright blue box and things like that. So where I'm going with this is that it's a really good idea to just expect that stuff to bake off and make a lot of smoke and smell when that's happening. And so if you have the ability to prep your parts in an outdoor stove or something like that and do that baking somewhere outside, you'll be much happier in terms of the way your build goes. And to continue on that note, if you are not participating in the build, but you are just bolting a brand new door onto your stove, that you may have gotten from a third party, and you light it up for the first time, don't be concerned when it smokes and smells for that first hour or so, because it's part of the process. And so that's just something I want to bring up, because I did go through the new door, and I expected it. I knew that was coming, Belgian Gulch, but I did think that that if I wasn't expecting it, and I didn't know what to expect, it would have concerned me, because it smells like something else is burning, like you think you're melting your house down or something. So just a side note there to, if you have a new door, you have new paint, do your best to bake that outside. If you're installing it inside and baking it, open your doors and windows and just know that it's going to do that. So there you go. Belgian Gulch, I mean, that's it. That is a little bit of a tip for you. If you could bake those before you send them out, I think your customers won't know how much of a favor you're doing them. But I think if you don't do that, and they aren't, real comfortable with this stuff, some of them are probably going to get a little freaked out right when they tell them to be prepared for sure. But if you could cook them a little bit, it would help. But I know it's almost impossible to do unless you mount them to a stove, because they have to get, like, I think on the can you can read it. It's like it starts to cure at like 800 degrees or something really hot. So it is difficult to do until it's installed. So no criticism there, just some input in terms of, and for everybody doing door stuff. It's just been a while since I experienced that, and I was like, oh yeah, this is the thing. So there's that. Tall Shadow says, on barrels I've often used a drying oil, but could it also be used for a door, or does it get too hot? If you're asking about the oil, Tall Shadow, my experience with the oils is that, you're right, it does a pretty good job on the body, but I do think it ends up smoking and burning off the top, even on the barrel, and I do think it would do it on the door as well. Paints are cool because you can get the different colors. The oil is nice. It does put a nice shine finish on it. But I guess where I'm really going is, if the barrel's just bare, I just leave it bare. There isn't much to be gained from oiling it, I don't think. I mean, depends on your goals and what you're doing, but if you know, it's going to look like a bare barrel basically. You can get it a little bit, get the matte finish off of it a bit with some oil. Um, you know, I really like the paints. I like colors. You can see my shirts are always colorful. You know, and so I always like the first time I painted my radiator bright blue. I was like, oh, I like that. That's cool, just because it's different. So, but yeah, certainly oil is okay. And yeah, Permaculture Playground says wouldn't oil season it much like you would do with cast iron pans or steel woks? Yes, it does, Permaculture Playground. It absolutely does. And that's exactly the concept, is that you're kind of seasoning it. But what happens is that, you know, right over the riser on your barrel, it gets glowing cherry red hot, and no seasoning really lasts there. And again, really my whole point is just like on the sides or whatever, it's like seasoned or unseasoned, you know, whatever. It doesn't, I guess I'm just saying it doesn't really, I don't think it's going to, I mean, I suppose it could help with oxidization. That might be a positive benefit if you live in a real moist environment and you're not using the stove. But I think that while it's burning, it's probably doing okay. So, and yeah, Short Bus Life is pointing out the aga for their color schemes, because I agree, Short Bus Life, those are amazingly gorgeous. I mean, that's my favorite aesthetic, is those agas in those sonic blues and the cream colors and the, you know, avocado greens. Like it's all those enamel colors that you'll see the same kind of finish on like enamel cast iron and things like that, cookware. And it's just beautiful, but it's, you know, it's a premium finish. I don't think we're going to do that DIY. But the paint actually does a pretty nice job, and it looks pretty, you know, it doesn't really mimic a enamel finish, but it does look nice, and it does change the look from just, you know, bare metal. And the metal's really nice too. I mean, brick and steel is a wonderful aesthetic in my opinion. So anyways, just kind of rambling on about that stuff. So, but I would like to go a little farther down the road into talking about doors and hardware. So, you know, there's so much we could go over here, but I guess really what got me thinking about this was getting Tom's door and really enjoying it, removing my aluminum door, and at the time when I removed it and put my Dragon Tech door on, you know, I was really starkly aware of the stark difference in weight. And again, there's no positive or negative here. It's not like the heavy one is worse or better, or the light one is worse or better. They were very different, I guess is what I'm trying to say, you know, and they both serve the same function, but they have different pros and cons, and it's very much like heavy fire bricks and insulating fire bricks. It's a lot of the same conversation. But along those lines, I wanted to talk about not just steel doors and aluminum doors, but I wanted to talk about DIY doors, custom doors, and off-the-shelf doors, and or salvage doors. So just a little bit of conversation about hardware in general, because it tends to be, you know, one of the sticking points for people traditionally, where I think we're starting to have a lot of solutions now that get people over this hump. But traditionally, you know, we came from the J-tube and it was great, we didn't need hardware. And then when we talked about people DIYing their own rocket mass heaters, it was real easy to do because you didn't need anything but, you know, bricks and mud and whatever else. But as we moved into the batch box era, we started to need doors and secondary hardware. And those things can be real sticking points for people. So along the way, we've come up with things like my aluminum door, some off-the-shelf doors, and now we've got awesome craftsmen like Tom at Dragon Tech who can craft, you know, parts for you. So we're starting to get past these barriers. But let's just talk a little bit about what those options are and, you know, how they might affect your build. So first and foremost is probably the idea of the salvage door. That one's really popular. A lot of people want to find a door, you know, somewhere in the wild that is going to work for what they need it to work for, without, you know, and they won't have to do a lot of fussing about modifications or anything like that. And so the salvage door route is one that I want to split up into two categories: firebox door and oven door. So in the case of the oven door, you can use just about anything. As long as you can get a good seal on it and close it, as long as it can take the temperatures, then size isn't an issue. There's no air inlets or anything like that that are critical to the burn. So with oven doors, there's a lot of leeway there. One of my favorite sources for oven doors is old boiler doors off of eBay. That's what my big door and my big full masonry stove is, and it's a nice cast iron door. It's really heavy. It has really neat hinges, and it was fantastic. I think it was like $100, and it's a lovely door that I could never create myself. It has a big flange ring mounting thing that I was able to masonry screw into the stove body. So for oven doors, salvage is great. The firebox door, unfortunately, it's almost never going to work because the firebox door is really, it's pretty much mandatory that it is very close to original design specifications, and more importantly, it's got to have the right air inlet size. And if it doesn't, it's just not worth your while because it's going to wreck the efficiency and cleanliness of the stove. So in terms of salvage doors, for the firebox door, you usually aren't going to find anything that's going to work. For an oven door, salvage, almost anything is great. With that said, if you do keep your eyes peeled and you come across a door that looks right for the firebox, it is possible to come across a good one. And I just had a customer who did that, and it worked out great. So it isn't to say it's impossible, just that it's, dimensions are the most important thing. And if you find one that matches your dimensions, you can use it, but otherwise don't try and put a round peg in a square hole, or however that saying goes. So let me catch up with chat here. I see Clint's got something to say. So Clint says, I left my aga behind when I left the orchard. It's one of the reasons I'm building this. And when I talked about the warm friendliness of such a stove. Yeah, there's, the agas are amazing. And of course they're, another tier above in terms of finish and, being a product than what we do here. But I do think that we actually probably achieve better, far better burning performance. I'm not sure about the rest of the performance. I think they have it pretty well figured out with cooking and all that stuff. But to continue that thought, yes, Clint, something about a masonry cook stove, or even in those cases they're not masonry, but a heavy high mass thermal battery cook stove, as the heart and center of your home, it's a luxury unlike any other. And even if you have other heat sources, even if you don't need additional heat, just a chill winter morning heating, your coffee or your eggs or whatever on that stove, and then having, the household kind of gather around that warmth, there's just nothing like it. And yeah, it's really an experience. So I get it, Clint. I can see why leaving one behind would inspire you to build another, because it's funny, we leave things behind, and it's only the things that that after that come back to us and go, man, that's something I'd like to have in my life. And it seems like an important process that we go through, huh? So anyways, going back to doors, salvage doors, we did that one. DIY doors. So DIY doors have traditionally been kind of the standard. What we've, there haven't been other options up until recently, so that's kind of what we've always done with these batch boxes. So there are some resources out there, there's on the forums, and if anyone, wanted to ask, I could certainly point you towards some great posts over the years of how people build their doors. There was one fellow in particular, and I don't remember who it was right now, but I could find the post, who really inspired me about the way he laid out his door framing. I'm not great with metalwork, so it was good for me to see different ways of building the frame and things like that. But in most cases with DIY doors, traditionally people have always thought steel, cutting and welding was kind of the only approach. And so that was sort of the standard approach for a long time. And then, I came up with my aluminum door, which really is actually just a piece of ceramic fiberboard, kind of with an aluminum skin. The fiberboard is really the door. That's the secret to it. People think of it as an insulated door, but it's almost the other way around. It's like the fiberboard is the door, and this aluminum is just the skin. But by doing that, you enable yourself to build a door without any welding. You can rivet it or screw it together. You can cut aluminum with regular wood tools, you know, a jigsaw or circular saw or table saw or whatever it is. So that kind of opens up a lot of doors, that's no pun intended, in terms of DIY stuff, because now you can do it without welder and without, you know, steel work, steel cutting and things like that, which really puts a lot of people off. In both cases, you're having to build a door, so it is a bit more of a project than like a J, but it's not too onerous, and the aluminum door is actually a really simple door to build. Now, the aluminum and the steel doors are really interesting to compare side by side. The steel is really heavy, feels really stout, feels like it's going to last forever, but it transfers a heck of a lot of heat through the door, and when you walk by it, you know, I'm actually a little scared of it. I mean, it's real hot, like real hot, like it'll burn you in a second. The aluminum door is cool because it's, you know, it's backed by insulation. It really never gets that hot, and aluminum is interesting because it doesn't emit the heat, so you can actually, like, you know, it'll burn you if you touch it. It's that hot, but it feels much safer in terms of, like, if you have, you know, small children or clearances or things like that. The aluminum door is actually pretty nice. The other part of those weight issues is kind of the way they swing on hinges. So my lovely Dragon Tech door is heavy duty with heavy duty hinges that are going to last forever. But the aluminum doors are nice because they're light and they don't pull on the stove when you're opening and closing them. So there's just some pros and cons there, and I just kind of wanted to make sure that we don't, you know, throw the baby out with the bathwater, as it were, and prioritize one over the other. And I guess really what I'm trying to say is I love my new steel Dragon Tech door, but I would love to reiterate how I'm still a really, really big believer in that aluminum door style of my old door, and so I don't want to give the impression that I moved away from that for any reason, any dissatisfaction. So from a DIY standpoint, you got a couple options there. You've got steel, aluminum. Those are probably about the only choices that I can really think of. I mean, there's variations on those themes, of course, but with that said, the aluminum doors are going to be real easy for folks to build, but you probably will come up with something that is, you know, maybe is a little less finished looking. Mine, I thought, looked fine, finished, but certainly not the same as a welded steel painted door. It is possible to do welded painted steel doors quite simply, but it will be quite a bit more work. So do expect that. So we could go farther down that road, but we'll just leave it there for now. I just wanted to kind of talk about those on the DIY. And then we talked about off-the-shelf doors. So if you're buying plans from me, my plans come with a couple doors, depending on which plan you're getting, specified that you can purchase from, you know, commercial manufacturers. Those doors have the appropriate primary and or secondary air inlet. And that's the most important thing. So if you find similar sized doors, you can check with me. We just need to make sure they have the proper cross-sectional area for any air inlets. And it's possible you could find one that's a close fit and get it to fit. But with that said, again, it's kind of like salvage doors. Hard to find the exact right one. I do recommend the correct ones in the plans. You may be able to fit something that isn't the one that's in the plans in there, but definitely pay attention to the sizing and don't accept anything that's too far out of range, because it will greatly affect the performance of the stove. So let me catch up with chat here, and then we can go back to doors a little bit. So I did see David Swanson talking about his cast riserless core. David, thank you for sharing that. David says, my cast riserless core was moved, and it took 4 people to carry into the work shed. CFB is a better choice. So that's really interesting to hear, David. Thank you so much for that update. So we've talked a few times in this chat about David's 2 cores, his cast riserless core and his ceramic fiberboard riserless core. And he's a really, really important resource for us, because he's able to A/B both of them and see how they are in terms of performance and weight and things like that. So in this case, he's got sort of semi-portable units, and so the cast one obviously is really heavy. Now that may not be as much of a downside if it were in a permanent installation, but there are other pros and cons. But it is something that's important to note, and David commented on this last week, if I remember correctly, and he said, it's so heavy, it takes 4 people to pick it up. But what's important to remember is that that weight is that much more mass you have to heat up before that core can burn at its peak efficiency. It has to get hot. And so that's heat. You're not wasting it. I mean, it's still in your stove, but you could be burning clean right out of the gate. So that's my, you guys know I love my insulated cores. So there's that. So let's see. Let me catch up here. Yeah, Short Bus Life says the rocket mass heater holds heat even longer than an AGA, but it's far more efficient with the same sort of feeling. That's awesome to hear. I love that. I mean, I do know that those old cook stoves like the AGAs, they really don't have very good combustion technology. They've worked out the way that flue gas flows, and the oven cooks nice and evenly for a wood-fired burner, and the whole thing's a gorgeous piece of equipment. But combustion is compared to what we are, we have set the bar pretty high here in the rocket stove world in terms of combustion cleanliness. And so it's hard once you've been here to go back to some of those other burners, even though they have so many beautiful features. It's just they don't burn that clean. And that, once you know what you can do, it's frustrating. It's like running around in a I don't know. I won't make an analogy. You know what I'm saying. So Tall Shadow says, what about if the air inlet on the second-hand door is not correct? Block it off and make separate primary air inlet below the door? Yeah, Tall Shadow. So yeah, there's a few ways you can go. Here's the main thing, is just that you get the air right. It doesn't really matter how you get there, but it has to go in the right places. The location of it is important. It doesn't matter if it's in the door, but or out of the door, but how it enters in the firebox is important. It's got to be in the right part of the firebox. So yeah, if you find a door that works and you can change the air and make it work, you can make it work. But again, usually it's not worth your while. Usually you would have been better off just building one from scratch, starting with the appropriate one. And I talked about this a few weeks ago, I think, when we talked about my customer who would use the metal skin. And I said, typically when you try and use a piece, that is from something else and use it for your rocket stove build, most people tend to try and build the rocket stove around that piece, and they end up having a rocket stove that doesn't fit any of the normal parameters, really, and doesn't burn clean. Whereas if you can just build a regular, build a rocket stove to plans, and your part fits, then it's a go. But don't modify your rocket stove to fit your part, is where I'm going with that. So let's see. David says try using gate type hinges where the door can be lifted off the hinge. Yeah, those like the pin hinges, open pin hinges, those are really good for door construction, because it is nice to be able to lift them off. Short Bus Life says, I made my door out of 1/2-inch steel plate for firebox and sheet metal for ash box with primary air intake on ash box. That's interesting, Short Bus Life. 1/2-inch steel plate is great for a door. So, hey, riding the wave. Nice to see you, man. Thanks for being here. Wood boiler guy, he says, is what he is. So, nice to have you here, man. We need more wood boiler guys. We could definitely use some more work in that space for sure. So, and Pete says, let's reinvent the AGA then. And Pete, I honestly, I think I've done it. I don't mean to be, I mean, it's not the AGA, but I think that these masonry cook stoves, and this configuration, actually, this tiny configuration in particular, which can be stretched and becomes my Continental, I do think they represent a whole new thing in cook stoves. And I have drawn plans for these stoves in steel or in cast, like an AGA. But there's no point in me producing them, because I can't, in our country, solid fuel devices are regulated. I've gone into all this before in the EPA, and so it's out of the scope of what I want to do to bring something like that to market. But I do think that that the product is there. I mean, I can, if you want to do it there, man, I will send you my metal design and you can build it, and we can figure out how that works. but it's actually just like a big version of your pizza oven, Pete. To be honest, it's not really very different at all. A little bit different, but you know, uh, it's not something that's real easy to aga. Aga's a big operation. I have actually reached out. I never heard back. I don't know if it got caught in spam or if they just weren't interested, but I did reach out to my friends there at Woodstock Soapstone and wondered if they wanted to partner on a cook stove. I do think that the riserless core in the cook stove of a design much like these that are masonry but not out of masonry would be an absolute industry changer. I do think so. I think we could have cook stoves that burn cleanly. There are some modern cook stoves. I think Hearth. I'm trying to remember the brand. I saw a lovely one at the fireplace shop. But again, they so in our country here in the U.S. there's an exemption to all the EPA rules if it's a cook stove. So the cook stoves have never been subject to the EPA rules. So they burn. They're just dirt. They're so dirty. They burn terribly. So yeah, I could go on and on about all that. I sell plans. Honestly, I spun my wheels for a long time thinking about how to get products out there, and I'm not sure how to go about that without starting a big operation that isn't really my style. So I wish I could just build craftsman one at a time pieces and sell them, but it's not very viable here. So anyways, enough about that. Let's reinvent the aga. I love that idea, Pete. And Short Bus Life says, yeah, they burn straight out of the firebox and up the chimney and just heat cast iron on the way out. Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're just as primitive a burner as can be. So I know we could do that. So yeah, Short Bus Life. I know you got that new design. I'd love to see it when you get there. I think all of us know how to do it. I don't think there's any secrets here. It's like we're going to basically build our rocket stove cook stoves and build with metal. And in your case, Short Bus Life, you have an application for yourself. So I think it's a great way to move forward. I've built some little stuff like that on spec, and it's cool. I just don't need more projects right now. So, oh, you guys, I didn't really mean to say I did it. But I just mean, we have great cook stoves. We have the ability to build unbelievable wood-fired cook stoves these days. And we're building them out of bricks and masonry because that's what's easy for us to do. But these could just as easily be, cast iron boxes, and they would represent a whole new paradigm in solid fuel cook stoves, I think. I really think that we are like the beginning of a new era, and I just don't think the world's caught on yet. And I don't mean just rocket stoves. I mean sort of our whole movement. We still, as a culture, accept box stoves that burn the same way they burned 100 years ago. And I just think that in 10 or 20 years, we'll all know that we can do so much better. The generation before us didn't know that they could do any better. They still look at box stoves and go, that's fine. So yeah, I think that we have some really, I think we got an exciting future, boys. So, all right. So yeah, Short Bus Life. I know that that's your prototype, and I know that you have. I get that you have a refined version of that, but I think your layout. You have a really good understanding of the concepts involved. So I just think it's really cool. You know what? With that said, let me see if I can find Short Bus's pictures here, and let's take a look at them while we're sitting here talking about cook stoves and stuff, because it's really cool. And oh, can you see the flames? Oh yeah, nice. There you go, boys. Okay, so let's see if I can do this without screwing everything up. I'm usually not very good at that, but we'll try. How about sound now? Now can you hear me? Sorry about that, guys. Uh, Sorry, guys. My audio capture device, they keep disconnecting. So let me go back there and I'll hook it back up. Were you getting it at the end there? No? Okay. I'm going to go try it one more time. How about now? Can you hear me now, guys? Check, check, check. Okay. Well, it looks like I'm talking at you. Um, I'm going to keep talking and you guys let me know if you can't hear me. So, all good. Okay, cool. So, I'm gone. I'm gone or I'm here? I don't know. Okay, good. So here's what we got: is he's got the firebox going out around this oven and up and out. So if you here's what I was trying to say earlier: is if you look at this thing as the modules, what Short Bus Life has done here is basically just compiled the modules of like my cook stoves. I mean, it's obvious. It's not like it's not like I did anything. It's just how you would do it. And just sort of start stacking them together, right? Putting these pieces together, and you're like, okay, that's pretty cool. See his exhaust coming out from down low, just like we want it, in this bell, which is a metal bell. And he's got the oven inside of there, so the gases flow around that, stratify top to bottom, and then eventually find their way out. So in this thing, you basically have all the elements of that cook stove, but it looks, it's like, okay, well, that's whatever. It's cool. It's all the pieces, but how am I going to build that anywhere? But then what he did, which I just love this, and here it is getting more refined. He's now got a door and oh, by the way, this manhole cover or whatever this is that you used for a cooktop, Short Bus Life, I love that. And I know you sent a picture of water boiling on it, so I know it transfers heat really well. I think it's so cool, man. And we always talk about steel, being prone to warping, but in this case, this is it's cast, I think, right? Like it's a really thick piece of cast iron. It's not going to warp. So it's awesome. I love that. But so here we go. Here's all the pieces. And then what I loved about this whole thing, what really kind of surprised me about it, Short Bus, was there's, cooking on top of that. It looks so cool. Oh, I don't have the whole picture, do I? I don't know why I don't have it. Darn. Shoot. Did you send it to me in something else? Oh, no, there it is. I don't know why I missed it. So here is the whole thing installed over here. And as you can see, he took that unit, and by putting this top over the whole thing and enclosing it, it turns that whole thing into basically a single cook stove. So there it is, right? In its location. I don't know why this is seeing it as different folders. I'm sorry about that. But here it is in top. So there's the cooktop, here's the countertop, and here's the firebox. So now that it's installed and has this top over it, it no longer looks like those individual pieces. And now it's just a really cool cook stove integrated into this space. That's frying chips. That's awesome. Cast iron manhole cover bolted down. So, man, I just, you know what, Short Bus, I just love it. I love everything about it. I got your email and I was just like, this is awesome. It's just all of what we talk about here in terms of DIY and the pieces and the parts, and you did it in a way that works for yourself. And like I said, my favorite thing about it is you've got all these pieces that kind of form this internal system. And what I love about your example is that people can see how you can just kind of then put that whole thing in a box like the AGA. Agfa, I forget, Aga, whatever, I'm missing it now. But you put it in one of those and you just have this beautiful looking cook stove that has, pretty modest beginnings. So with a granite chipping behind the firebox. Oh, cool. Okay, that makes sense. So you just filled that in to add in the mass, I'm guessing. Granite shards, as it were, right? To fill in the empty space and to add thermal mass. I just love it. I love all of it. And so thank you for letting me share that, Short Bus. Thanks for sharing that with all of us. It's so cool to see these unique builds. And actually that really reminds me of that mud build I showed you a few weeks ago. And actually while we're talking about this stuff, why don't we go back to that, because I did just get an update from my friend on that one, and I'd like to show you guys that as well. So and it's kind of along the same lines, so it's kind of a perfect one. So hopefully my mic will keep working here. But here's the continuation of this build. And so this is that really neat cook stove build where my friend had just had insulated fire bricks and really wanted to do the rest out of mud. And so all of the body of this is all just adobes, clay and sand, from his property. These are the insulated fire bricks in the firebox. He got a ceramic glass top from a range, but he didn't remove it from the metal frame. He just kind of cobbed the whole thing in here. And I think that's totally appropriate, as long as the expansion contraction doesn't stress this, and I guess it will remain to be seen, but it sure is a simple way to go, and it kind of left a nice little finish. Once he gets around to finishing this all, he can dress his finish coat right up to that. I imagine it's going to look really beautiful. And then, as you guys know, that's running into this oven with this domed arch. So this isn't done by any means, but I love this in Short Bus Life. I just love seeing these alternative builds. We're here often talking about doing things the right way, and sticking, I've got my plans, and they show you one way to do things. So both you guys, Short Bus Life and my friend there, you guys have given us great examples of ways you can achieve these things in different materials and different layouts. So Short Bus Life was asked, how hot does your oven get, by Pete, and Short Bus Life says the oven hits around 600 degrees Fahrenheit on wood, or 250, I think that's C, he said 350 C on wood, or 250 C on coal, which, that's amazing. That's fantastic. If you can get to 600 degrees in that oven on wood, that's awesome. So love it, love it, love it. That was kind of a continuation of doors and hardware, I guess, in terms of my topic list here. But that's great. So, good one, guys. Alrighty, so let's move on to the next question. So the next question I got was from someone who often is with us here in chat. I don't know if you're here today, and I apologize because this is actually 2 weeks old now, and I keep meaning to get to it, and I didn't get to it last time. But the question came in, and I'm just going to paraphrase. But the question asked, the person stated, I really like the J. I love the simplicity. I think a J tube is what I want. But upon looking at the dimensions, I'm wondering about cleaning it. Am I even going to be able to get my hand in there? How can I, is it a real pain in the butt to clean the J-tube? Should I modify it to make it easier to clean? Talk to me about cleaning the J-tube, because it does seem like that might be a real issue. And so I'm sure there's many of you here who can chime in on this. It's one of those things that before you have the rocket mass heater, you're like, that just looks like it's going to be a giant pain in the butt. They say I've got to keep it clean and clean it all the time. It looks like it's not going to, how am I going to do that? It's going to be really difficult. And what I want to say is that in practice, it turns out to be totally no big deal. As a matter of fact, I think that in hindsight, I probably preferred cleaning out my J to any other stove I've ever had. And there's a few reasons for that. First and foremost is that the J it does have a small firebox entrance and a convoluted path right out of the gate. But what that means is that any dust you kick up in there is typically, as long as it's, the stove's probably warm, so it probably has some draft going. So any dust you kick up in there is going to get sucked into the system. And that's my way of saying that when you are cleaning your stove, cleaning a J is a less dusty situation than cleaning a batch box or a regular box stove. Those types of stoves tend to just puff dust in your face when you're shoveling them out. The J-tube is actually pretty benign. So I like cleaning the J-tube for a host of reasons, but one of them is just that the mess is kind of contained in the J-tube. There's a lot of ways to go about cleaning the J-tube. What I ended up finding out was I ended up with just I had a little card that was, just a little, basically kind of like a little sweep, and so I made mine out of a little ash shovel, and I said card. That's not the right word, is because I wanted to say a metal card on the end of a stick, but really what it was just like a little tiny hoe. And so you can make yourself a little tiny hoe out of any number of things. I used a little ash shovel and just bent it down, but I just found the perfect shovel that fit right in that J-tube, and I could just sweep the ash to the back, and then with my shovel bent into an L, I could just lift it out and dump it right in. Other ways of doing it are using like a little square planting pot, like a little cup, you can just reach in there and just scoop the stuff out, put it in your ash bucket. There's a host of ways to do it, but really the point of this is to say, don't be dissuaded thinking that they're difficult to clean. They're really not. It is difficult to get your arm all the way back there, but for the most part, you really don't have to, and you will, we're pretty good with tools. You can come up with something that allows you to just drag the ash back and then really easily it's kind of nice. You actually, you reach in, you just scoop it out. It's kind of better than shoveling it out of the firebox of a big box stove, in my experience. Mark says, what's the fuel length limit on the J-tube, specifically your 6-inch Walker Super Hot? So that's a great question, Mark. So the fuel length on a J-tube, the J-tubes feed vertically, and ideally you want your fuel to stay below the top of your stove, top of that feed opening. However, this is a question I get a lot because my core is only about 11 inches top to bottom. The outside is 12. This is out of memory, so if I'm wrong, which I could be, don't pick on me. It's close to this. But the inside dimension is 11 inches from the firebox floor to the top of the core. But keep in mind that that is a core, and it's intended to be encapsulated with a masonry skin. That's probably going to be brick, is how it was designed. So you can add another 2.5 inches at least to that height, which should bring you up to like close to 14 inches. And then a couple inches of fuel sticking out above that is really not a big deal, like a little 1 or 2. So really, the goal with all of my stoves is I'm kind of aiming for 16-inch fuel length ideally. And I think, Mark, that 16 inches is totally reasonable for the J-tube length for my specific 6-inch Walker Super Hot. Now that's if it's built into a full stove. If you're just running the core bare, if you do it like that, you're going to end up leaving, 4 or 5 inches out above the top. And what happens is the wood that's above the top isn't subjected to the same high velocity air, right, that's coming into the tube. And so flames can, if they can get out of the top of the firebox, then they can just kind of burn if there's sticks up high. But as long as they're close to that opening, everything's coming in pretty quickly. It's hard for the heat and the gas to start burning up and out. So that's a sort of a long way of saying, Mark, that the fuel length is really regulated by your overall firebox height, and your firebox height is dictated by the thickness of whatever you're adding on top of that core. Design length is like 14 to 16. So you're planning a brick wrap and was figuring you have a few inches sticking out. Perfect. So that's exactly right. And that's, like I said, that's kind of designed parameters. Sounds like you're right in the middle there. You've got it figured out. If you're anything like me, you will occasionally stick like a 4 foot long piece of a pallet in there or something and just see what happens. And that's totally okay. Like even in my house, inside, every now and then we'd be joking around and we'd have like a piece of wood that was, literally 8 feet long, touching the ceiling, coming out of that thing. And yeah, it gets a little, it's gonna fall over and light your house on fire. Don't do that unattended. But the point is, you'll play with it, and you will learn what works, and it will change on different days. When it's really cold out and you have a great draft, you can burn pretty long sticks. So there you go. Hope that helps. So Tall Shadow says, seeing so many options can really open the door to not thinking a stove has to look a certain way, and is mostly only limited to our imaginations. That's a really great observation, Tall Shadow. And it's so helpful to see all of these examples, isn't it? I am just constantly sort of renewed in my enthusiasm as I get all of your build photos and sort of just get sort of re-inspired and go, oh yeah, that's such a cool way to think about that. And yeah, it's really neat to see this stuff. So Short Bus Life says, as Matt has said in the past, think of smoke path as flowing like water upside down. So better it flows with water, the better it will flow with smoke when inverted. And I love that Short Bus Life, that resonates with people. I've had some people, that concept is really still difficult to visualize. But for those of us who see it, and everyone's brains works differently, I know that. But that water pool filling up and flowing is, for me, just the best way to view the way these things flow. And so I love hearing you repeat that. Thank you. And Tall Shadow agrees. He says, a great way to look at free gas movement. So Mark says, I cut most of my wood to 18 inches for my Vermont castings box stove, but moving forward I'll be sure to process a little shorter for the J. That's great, Mark. I think your 18 will probably be fine. But yeah, if target that 16 moving forward, and as you go, you'll find what works for you. I honestly don't really recall what I settled into in my big house when I was burning. 16 was always my target, but if I remember correctly, I had quite a bit of fuel that was out at times. And like I said, you just kind of have to manage it. One tall piece is no big deal. It's just if they're all tall, you kind of are building a little potential fire above the firebox. But if you just have one sticking up, it's usually not a problem. You'll also notice as it gets taller, like I was talking about before, you have the ability for now gases to escape that zone of, incoming air. And what that means is you're going to become really aware of how dry your wood is. Because even when you think your wood's really dry, what's really interesting is it's the part up top there that always steams off. And so if your wood is a little bit long, you'll end up with like steamy bits coming out the top, and that's something that is sort of interesting anyways to pay attention to as you go through that experience of learning your J-tube. I think you'll really enjoy it. So Pablo, your chat's working. I'm glad. It's so nice having you here, man. Thanks for being here. I know you said earlier it was a problem, but Pablo says, I finally have my J-tube running and I'm learning as I go, and I really appreciate all I have learned from this forum. That's awesome to hear, Pablo. I'm so glad that we're moving you forward. And you're a great example of exactly the process that everyone here has gone through or will go through, I hope, at some point in their life. And that is that period of going from asking a lot of questions and thinking about rocket stoves but not having experienced one to starting to live with one. And it's just so cool. I was pretty self-aware of my perceptions changing, and now when I talk to all you guys, it's fun to see everyone in the different stages have all these conversations. And what I'm loving about our community, you guys, is how we are all coming together and kind of moving forward as a group now. Like, I really think our velocity or whatever, we're gaining speed. Like, because we're all starting to sort of consolidate on our build ideas and our, like what works and what doesn't. Like, we're all starting to sort of have a pretty solid community idea of how these things can go together. And I think that people coming after us here are going to really benefit, and it makes me feel good. I think we're building a good thing here. And like I said, I think we're in a different era. I think we can, you know, change what people expect out of solid fuel burners. And yeah, we're starting to put it together here. It's exciting. It's been something, you know, a decade of my life waiting to see people start to embrace this. And yeah, I'm rambling. I'm optimistic. What can I say? So David Swanson says, "Oh, this is awesome, David. I love this." David says, "I built a 4-inch shovel. I think it's a 4x4-inch shovel and 3-inch wide hoe to remove ashes." Yeah, okay. So a 4x4-inch shovel, just like I was saying, like a little 4-inch square shovel, probably with a vertical handle, I'm guessing, and a 3-inch wide hoe to drag the ash back to remove the ash from the riser list. And Belgian Gulch, if I may make a suggestion, it might be something that some rocket stove, rocket mass heater owners, especially those who are having third parties build the stoves for them, they may desire a hearth kit specifically for rocket mass heaters. Who knows? But, you know, there's hearth kits in all the stores that have a regular shovel and a brush and all those things that people use in regular fireplace hearths. Perhaps Dragon Tech might think about offering a rocket mass heater hearth kit with a little hoe and a little shovel for J-tubes, or maybe a V-shaped shovel for batch boxes. I don't know. Just some ideas. Just brainstorming there. I think there's some merit there. I actually might be interested in a little J-tube hoe. I think that's a pretty cool thing. So there you go. So David says, "What did you think of the lighting video?" It was great, David. I always love seeing, you know, these stoves burn. It's like gives me the greatest joy to see all of your guys' creations. And David, yours in particular, you know, I love all of your construction. I hope that our dialogue this week was helpful. I know that we kind of it seemed like we were crossing our wires there, but I think we got it. Together, and you know, I do want you to know that I really appreciate your builds, and your attitude and your approach to trying these things out and seeing what works and what doesn't. So yeah, David, it's awesome to see your burn and to see the cast core. That's really cool, man. Really cool. So let's see. Oh well. All right, you guys. I guess I've got another thing to go into, but I think I'll save it for next week. We're right at about that time, and as you guys know, I do try and leave this reasonable. So awesome, David. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you for your understanding. Appreciate it. So yeah, so let's call it a day for today, you guys. Let's let's all stay warm and keep burning. I'm loving fire season, man. I gotta tell you guys, I know you guys are mostly experiencing this too, but oh, Mark, thank you so much. I appreciate that so much, and your appreciation is really, really, really appreciated. We'll just appreciate each other back and forth. Yeah, I just want to say how much I'm enjoying the luxury of having a masonry cook stove in my living space these cold days, and man, I just hope you guys are too. And if you are, share it with people. Let them know. You know, like I said, I think we can start to really change people's lives here. So I'll keep sharing. I'll be here next Wednesday. I hope you guys come back next Wednesday. Always learning. Thank you for being here. We're having a cold day today, so hopefully you're enjoying the fire. Everybody, you guys, awesome Wednesday today. Be back next Wednesday. Send me your questions. Send me your comments. Send me your build photos. I'm here to help you guys build the best stove that we can. So I'm happy to do that, and I love getting together with all you guys. So all right, I'm gonna sit here and say goodbye for another hour if I keep this going, so I'll hit the outgoing video, and I'll say thanks a lot for watching, you guys. Lolly, thank you, Lolly, for being here. I know exactly who you are. I'm so glad to see you. I hope you're doing well. I hope you and all of your things that we talked about, I won't talk about it here, but I hope everything is going great and you and your family are healthy and wonderful. Lovely to see you, Lolly. Ooh, I got chills right there. So, all right, you guys. I'll see you guys next week. We'll do it again next Wednesday. Hope you guys all are happy and healthy and having a great week. And I'm going to say goodbye again for another 5 minutes. All right, you guys. Thanks for watching. See you, everybody. Thank you.